I woke up alone in the ICU, tubes in my arms, machines breathing for me, and my only son had vanished. Not just from the hospital, but from my life. He took his wife and kids to Switzerland while I lay there, unconscious, fighting to stay alive. He thought I wouldn't make it. But I did. My name is Olivia Bennett. And what I did next? He never saw it coming. My eyes fluttered open slowly, the blinding white lights overhead stabbing painfully into my vision. It felt like waking from the deepest, darkest sleep, only to be thrust violently into a nightmare. The mechanical beeps and hums surrounding me were disorienting. My body felt foreign, tethered by tubes and wires that bound me to machines I couldn't yet understand. I tried moving my fingers slightly, testing my strength. Each muscle felt drained, exhausted, as if I'd just completed a marathon. My chest was heavy, a constant reminder of what had landed me here in the first place. A devastating heart attack that had come with no warning, gripping me with a terrifying intensity I would never forget. "Mrs. Bennett, you're awake." A soft, calming voice broke through my confusion. A nurse approached, her gentle eyes filled with compassion and quiet strength. Claire Harris, her badge read. I blinked, desperately trying to clear the fog from my brain. "What happened?" I asked weakly, the raspiness in my voice making me barely audible. "You had a heart attack," Claire said gently, her hand lightly touching mine. "You've been unconscious for nearly 2 days, but you're safe now, stable. You're a fighter, Mrs. Bennett." 2 days? My mind struggled to piece things together, racing back through flashes of memories that were slowly surfacing. The last thing I clearly remembered was sitting down for dinner, my son Austin casually chatting about his business, his eyes avoiding mine more than usual. That strange emotional distance had become increasingly apparent lately, but I'd shrugged it off, convinced it was just stress from his demanding career. "Austin?" I whispered, feeling a surge of panic rising in my chest. "My son, Austin. Where is he?" Claire's gentle smile faltered slightly, her eyes briefly flickering away before meeting mine again. "He was here initially. He visited briefly, right after you were admitted." "Briefly?" The word echoed in my mind, deepening the ache in my chest beyond the physical pain. I knew Austin had always been driven, fiercely independent, and focused on success. I had nurtured that ambition in him from an early age, sacrificing everything as a single mother to give him the best life possible. But this felt different, unsettlingly detached. "Yes." Claire hesitated again, clearly uncomfortable but determined to remain honest with me. "He left a message at the nurse's station. He said he had pressing obligations and wouldn't be able to return immediately. He mentioned something about a trip abroad." The room seemed to spin momentarily as my brain absorbed her words. A trip abroad? Pressing obligations? My mind raced, connecting fragments of conversations I'd overheard Austin having on the phone. Hushed discussions, hushed plans, all conveniently timed around my sudden illness. Realization hit me with gut-wrenching clarity. He'd planned a vacation, an escape, without me. He'd left me here, helpless, barely clinging to life. Did he leave alone? I forced myself to ask, my voice brittle with dread. Claire paused, compassion deepening her features. "No, Mrs. Bennett. He traveled with his wife and children." Pain and betrayal surged simultaneously within me, sharp enough to make me gasp. My son, my only child, had deliberately abandoned me during the most vulnerable, frightening moment of my life. It was as if the floor beneath me had disappeared entirely, leaving me suspended over a void of betrayal and disbelief. As Claire gently adjusted my IV drip, murmuring words of encouragement I barely registered, my mind drifted through our past. Every sacrifice, every tear shed alone after long days working multiple jobs just to make ends meet. Images flooded my memory. The modest apartment we'd shared, his bright laughter filling my days, his graduation day when pride had surged through my veins, overwhelming me with joy. But those memories seem tainted now, colored by the bitter truth of this moment. Austin's success had always been my success. His victories felt like my victories. Yet somehow, in chasing that very success, he had lost sight of something fundamental: compassion, loyalty, family. Lying there, surrounded by sterile machinery and aching solitude, an anger began to grow inside me. Not the fiery, explosive rage I'd sometimes experienced in my younger days, but a slow-burning resolve, steady and unwavering. It strengthened my spirit, fed by determination and a growing clarity. Claire noticed the shift in my expression, the change in my energy, and smiled warmly. "I see that look, Mrs. Bennett. You're not one to give up, are you?" "No," I answered quietly, my voice steadier now, fueled by newfound purpose. "Not after everything I've fought for." She nodded approvingly, patting my hand softly before moving away to tend to other patients. Alone once again, I closed my eyes briefly, gathering my strength. Austin had clearly underestimated me, assuming I was weak, fragile, and easily left behind. He had forgotten the woman who had raised him, the woman who had overcome countless challenges, sacrificing her own dreams to ensure his future. In that stark, quiet hospital room, I made a silent promise to myself. I would not only survive this betrayal, but I would confront it head on. Austin needed to see clearly what he had chosen to discard, what he had so carelessly abandoned. And most importantly, he needed to understand that his actions had consequences he had never anticipated. As determination coursed through my veins, I began formulating a plan. Austin might have left me behind, certain that I wouldn't survive long enough to challenge him, but he was gravely mistaken. The next time he saw me, I wouldn't be weak, helpless, or at his mercy. I would be standing strong, armed with something he never saw coming. Life hadn't always been this complicated. I vividly remember the days when Austin was just a boy, his laughter echoing through our small but cozy home, filling every room with warmth and joy. Those were simpler times, days of endless possibilities and dreams we built together, brick by brick, as mother and son. After my husband passed away suddenly in a tragic accident when Austin was only 7, I became both parents in one, a role I never anticipated but embraced wholeheartedly. I worked tirelessly, juggling multiple jobs, sleepless nights, and countless moments of uncertainty, driven by a single purpose: to provide Austin with a life full of opportunities, stability, and love. My goal was clear. I wanted him to thrive despite our circumstances. I remember evenings when exhaustion would weigh me down, my body aching, but all of it melted away the moment I saw Austin smiling up at me, his eyes sparkling with innocence and endless curiosity. I'd read bedtime stories until he'd drift into sleep, his tiny hand clutching mine tightly. Those quiet moments, so simple yet profound, anchored me through the hardest years. Austin was always bright, effortlessly excelling at everything he touched. From academics to sports, his achievements brought pride and validation to the sacrifices I'd made. As he grew older, his ambitions expanded, matching his capabilities stride for stride. I supported every new goal, every daring ambition, believing deeply that his success would also be my own. When he met Megan during his college years, I welcomed her with open arms. She was kind-hearted and gentle, a calming presence that balanced Austin's driven nature. Together they built a life filled with promise and potential. Soon Ella and Max arrived, filling our family with a new kind of joy, one filled with laughter, milestones, and precious memories. Yet somewhere along the journey, subtle changes began to appear. Austin's visits became infrequent, our conversations shorter and less personal. Busy became the constant excuse, and initially I understood. Life was demanding, especially with young children and a blossoming career. But then I noticed a deeper shift. His voice grew distant, his eyes reluctant to meet mine, avoiding conversations about anything beyond superficial pleasantries. Holidays, birthdays, and family gatherings turned into obligations rather than celebrations. I felt a growing disconnect, as though I were gradually becoming an outsider, even as I fought to remain relevant and engaged in their lives. I tried rationalizing this distance, convincing myself that it was temporary, just a phase that would pass as Austin settled into the complexities of adulthood. Yet, the truth lingered in the quiet moments of solitude, the undeniable feeling that I was slowly losing my son, bit by bit. Still, I clung to hope, believing that beneath the surface, our bond remained unbreakable. After all, I was his mother, the one constant in his ever-changing world. It seemed impossible that the child I'd nurtured with unwavering love and sacrifice could drift so far away that he'd leave me entirely alone at the brink of death. But the reality in the sterile ICU room shattered my comforting illusions. Betrayal wasn't a strong enough word to capture what I felt. My mind kept circling back to those treasured early years, desperately searching for clues I'd missed, moments I'd misinterpreted. Yet amidst the anguish, one thought became crystal clear. Austin's actions didn't just reflect a momentary lapse in judgment. They were symptomatic of a deeper, more troubling reality. My son had become a stranger, and the life we'd built together had splintered into fragments, each piece now questioning everything I believed about our relationship. In that moment of harsh realization, I understood the gravity of what was at stake. Not just my physical survival, but the emotional core of my identity as a mother. The memories we shared, the life we built, all now felt threatened by this betrayal. Yet I refused to surrender to despair. Instead, I clung fiercely to those memories, using them as fuel for my resolve. Austin had chosen to leave, to abandon me at my weakest, but I had made my choice as well. I would reclaim my dignity, confront this painful truth, and remind him of the mother he had forgotten, the one who had fought relentlessly to give him everything. As I lay in that hospital bed, preparing myself mentally and emotionally for the journey ahead, I knew this wasn't just about confronting Austin. It was about reclaiming myself, redefining my worth, and ensuring he understood that actions, especially those driven by selfishness and indifference, would never go unanswered. The harsh fluorescent lights of the ICU cast eerie shadows around me, amplifying my sense of isolation. I lay awake, my thoughts spinning furiously as I pieced together the heartbreaking puzzle of Austin's betrayal. My son, whom I had nurtured, supported, and cherished, had deliberately abandoned me at my most vulnerable moment. It was a truth that burned deeply, eclipsing even the physical pain from my recent heart attack. As the hours dragged by, each second felt like an eternity, deepening my sense of loneliness. The soft whispers of nurses, muffled footsteps, and distant beeps of machines underscored my stark solitude. Claire occasionally checked on me, her compassionate presence a fleeting comfort, yet nothing could erase the anguish of my son's absence. In my mind, I replayed the last few interactions I'd had with Austin, desperately searching for signs I might have overlooked. Had there been hidden resentment lurking behind his polite smiles? Had I become so oblivious to his feelings that I'd missed the growing gulf between us? Questions bombarded me relentlessly, each unanswered query deepening the wound. Unable to sleep, I reflected on the recent months. Austin had become increasingly elusive, distant even during family gatherings. Conversations that once flowed easily were now strained, peppered with awkward silences and superficial exchanges. The warmth that had defined our relationship was replaced by something cold and unfamiliar. It was as though a wall had slowly been erected, brick by brick, without my noticing until it was too high to see over. Then my mind drifted to Megan and my grandchildren, Ella and Max. They had always been rays of sunshine in my life. Megan, always kind and thoughtful, had seemed genuinely affectionate toward me, her demeanor never hinting at complicity in Austin's cruel decision. Could she have agreed with his choice, or had she been forced into silence, feeling powerless to challenge him. My heart ached even more fiercely at the thought of Ella and Max, innocent pawns in a complicated family drama they couldn't possibly comprehend. I wondered what explanation Austin had provided to them. Had he justified his actions with lies, or had he simply brushed aside their questions, expecting their youthful innocence to shield them from deeper curiosity? As these thoughts consumed me, I was startled by a quiet knock on the door. Claire appeared again, carrying a gentle expression that betrayed her concern. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," she said softly. "I wanted to check if you needed anything or maybe just some company." Grateful for her kindness, I nodded slightly. "Company would be nice," I whispered, my voice hoarse from hours of silence. Claire settled into the chair beside my bed, her comforting presence offering a temporary reprieve from my tormenting thoughts. She hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Mrs. Bennett, sometimes families handle crises in ways that are difficult to understand. I've seen situations like yours before, people acting out of character, driven by fear, denial, or even selfishness." I listened carefully, her words striking a chord within me. I never imagined Austin could be capable of such cruelty, I confessed, feeling my voice break slightly. I gave him everything. My entire life revolved around him. And now, it feels like none of that mattered. Claire's eyes softened further, empathy radiating from her every gesture. "It matters, Mrs. Bennett. It always matters. But people lose sight of what's important sometimes, blinded by their ambitions or their fears." "Maybe that's where I went wrong," I mused quietly, more to myself than Claire. "Maybe I focused too much on giving Austin a life I never had, neglecting to teach him the values that truly matter." "You can't blame yourself entirely," Claire responded firmly yet gently. "Everyone makes their own choices. Austin is an adult. He's accountable for his decisions and their consequences." Her words resonated deeply, bringing clarity amidst the confusion. Yes, Austin was accountable. He had made a deliberate choice, a choice that disregarded everything we'd shared, every sacrifice I'd made. The anger I felt earlier began to rise again, tempered now by resolve rather than despair. "You're right," I told Claire, determination evident in my voice. "He chose this path, and now he has to face the consequences." Claire nodded, recognizing the shift in my demeanor. "What do you intend to do?" I paused, reflecting carefully before answering. "I refuse to be defined by his actions. I will confront him, not out of revenge, but to show him the strength he underestimated. He needs to understand the true cost of his choices." Claire smiled softly, admiration evident in her eyes. "I believe you will," she said warmly. "I've seen strength in many forms, and yours is unmistakable." Her words gave me courage. Alone in that ICU room, betrayed by the person I loved most, I began formulating a plan. It would require strength I wasn't sure I possessed, resilience forged in the fire of heartbreak, and unwavering resolve. But I was ready. Austin's abandonment had stripped away my illusions, forcing me to confront reality with brutal honesty. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, filled with emotional hurdles and painful confrontations. But this was no longer just about me. It was about reclaiming my dignity, preserving the integrity of the family values I'd fought so hard to uphold, and teaching Austin a lesson he could never forget. As the darkness outside slowly gave way to the first light of dawn, I felt a new sense of clarity and purpose. I would rise from this pain, stronger and more determined than ever. And when I faced Austin again, it would be with courage, dignity, and an unshakable conviction in the power of truth. He had left me here, believing I'd quietly fade away, forgotten and powerless. But he had misjudged me profoundly. The mother he'd abandoned in that ICU bed was gone, replaced by a woman who would stand tall, determined to ensure her son understood the magnitude of his betrayal and the strength of a mother's unwavering love. The first rays of dawn sliced through the curtains, casting a gentle glow across the hospital room. After days of uncertainty, something powerful stirred within me, a newfound resilience born from the ashes of betrayal. Austin had left me in a place of darkness, believing I wouldn't have the strength to climb out. He underestimated the very woman who had fought every battle to give him the life he enjoyed. I sat upright slowly, testing my body's limits with caution. My muscles protested at first, weakened by my prolonged confinement to the hospital bed, yet each pang of discomfort was overshadowed by the determination driving me forward. This was no longer about mere survival. It was about confronting Austin face to face, making him understand the profound pain of abandonment and holding him accountable. Over the next few days, my resolve strengthened as I worked diligently with the hospital's physical therapist, gradually regaining the strength needed to take on the task ahead. Claire became an invaluable ally, quietly assisting me beyond her professional duties. She provided emotional support, encouragement, and a practical hand as I prepared for my discharge and the confrontation that awaited me. My brother, Michael, arrived soon after, his presence a comforting reminder of familial loyalty I desperately needed. Michael had always been steadfast and supportive, a stark contrast to Austin's recent actions. Seeing him enter the room brought tears of relief and gratitude to my eyes. "Olivia," Michael said gently, pulling me into a careful embrace. When I heard what Austin had done, I couldn't believe it. How could he abandon you like that? His eyes reflected the anger and disbelief I'd been carrying for days. "I've asked myself that same question repeatedly," I admitted softly, "but now I'm focused on what happens next." Michael nodded approvingly, sensing the strength in my voice. "Whatever you need, I'm here," he assured me, determination evident in his tone. "We're in this together." Over the next hours, Michael and I meticulously crafted our plan. I secured my discharge papers, feeling stronger physically and emotionally than I had in days. But it was the final piece of the puzzle, a crucial document Michael had brought, that solidified my path forward. This document was powerful enough to shake the foundation of Austin's carefully constructed world, a recently updated version of my will, clearly stating that Austin's inheritance depended entirely on my approval and his adherence to the core family values he'd seemingly abandoned. Holding the document tightly, I felt a wave of empowerment. Austin had been banking on my weakness, expecting me never to find the strength or opportunity to challenge him. He was sorely mistaken. I wasn't the frail, helpless woman he assumed I'd become. I was Olivia Bennett, the woman who raised him single-handedly, fighting tooth and nail for his every opportunity. The woman who would now stand face to face with him, confronting the consequences of his selfishness head on. Claire and Michael stood beside me as I prepared to leave the hospital. Claire's eyes were filled with pride, Michael's with unwavering support. As I stepped into the sunlight for the first time since my ordeal began, the warmth against my skin felt symbolic, heralding a new chapter, one I would define with courage, dignity, and an unwavering commitment to truth. The airport awaited me, a portal to Switzerland and the life Austin had momentarily stolen away. Each step toward that plane was fueled by a fierce determination that left no room for doubt. This was my turning point, my declaration to the world that Olivia Bennett was not only alive, but stronger than ever, ready to reclaim her dignity, her family, and her truth. Austin might have thought he had the upper hand, believing I'd never rise from the ICU bed he'd abandoned me in. But as I boarded the flight, armed with conviction and the powerful will in my possession, I knew without a doubt he would soon realize just how gravely he had underestimated me. The plane hummed steadily beneath me, its rhythm a soothing backdrop as I reflected on the monumental step I was taking. Around me, passengers settled into their routines, unaware of the emotional weight I carried on this journey. My destination, Switzerland, was not merely a picturesque escape. It was now the battleground upon which I'd confront the deepest betrayal of my life. As the plane ascended above the clouds, memories flooded my thoughts, bittersweet recollections of family vacations when Austin was younger. We'd always dreamed of traveling Europe together, exploring quaint towns and breathtaking mountains. How ironic, I thought bitterly, that Austin had chosen this exact place to celebrate what he probably assumed was his newfound freedom from familial obligations. I leaned my head against the window, gazing out at the endless expanse of sky. My heart swirled with emotions, anger, sadness, but also a burgeoning clarity and strength I'd never felt before. The betrayal had sliced deep, yet it had awakened a resilience within me that Austin had severely underestimated. Throughout the flight, my thoughts oscillated between anticipation and anxiety. Michael had provided me with details about Austin's location, a luxury hotel nestled in Zurich's heart, where he'd chosen to enjoy his vacation with Megan and the kids. Michael had hesitated at first, unsure about confronting Austin in such a dramatic, public way, but ultimately supported my decision to ensure Austin truly grasped the gravity of his actions. My pulse quickened as the plane descended through layers of clouds, revealing Zurich's magnificent landscape, punctuated by stunning mountain peaks and tranquil lakes. My heart tightened, not from physical pain, but from the realization of what was to come. I was about to disrupt Austin's carefully orchestrated narrative, exposing the truth he'd buried beneath layers of indifference and selfishness. Stepping onto Swiss soil felt surreal. The bustling airport, alive with the chatter of travelers and the hum of luggage wheels, sharply contrasted the quiet, sterile isolation of the hospital. Each step toward baggage claim was an act of reclaiming my life, asserting my presence where Austin least expected it. Outside, I took a deep breath, savoring the crisp, fresh air, each inhalation filling me with renewed determination. The taxi ride through Zurich was short, yet filled with reflective silence. I watched the picturesque cityscape glide past, elegant architecture and vibrant street life juxtaposed with my own internal struggle. Arriving at the hotel, my heart pounded fiercely, adrenaline flooding my veins. The grandeur of the entrance was imposing, a stark reminder of the luxurious life Austin now seemed to prioritize above family bonds. Gathering my courage, I stepped through the ornate doors into the expansive lobby, a space bustling with affluent travelers. My eyes scanned the room methodically, heart hammering with every passing second. And then, amidst the elegant furnishings and soft murmurs, I spotted Austin, relaxed and oblivious, seated comfortably with Megan by his side and the children playing nearby. Seeing him so casual, untouched by the magnitude of his actions, ignited a fresh wave of anger within me. Austin glanced up briefly, his expression freezing in shock as recognition dawned. The color drained from his face, replaced by confusion and panic as he stood abruptly. Megan's eyes widened in disbelief, her gaze flickering uncertainly between Austin and me. The children paused their play, sensing the sudden shift in atmosphere. I took measured steps forward, each footfall echoing my resolve. Standing just feet from Austin, I met his stunned gaze head on, my voice steady and clear. "You didn't expect to see me here, did you, Austin?" His lips moved soundlessly, his carefully constructed composure shattered instantly. "Mom," he finally stammered, visibly shaken. "What? How?" My response was firm, laced with determination and dignity that caught the attention of everyone nearby. "You left me behind believing I wouldn't survive your betrayal. But here I am, alive and stronger than you could have imagined." The tension between us crackled like a live wire, drawing the attention of onlookers. Austin's world was collapsing around him, evident in his desperate attempts to compose himself. But the truth was now inescapable. He'd gambled on my vulnerability and lost. In that pivotal moment, I felt empowered, no longer the discarded, helpless figure he had abandoned. Instead, I stood as a symbol of resilience, ready to confront him with the undeniable truth, the profound consequences of his selfish actions. The luxurious hotel lobby fell eerily silent, all eyes fixated on the unfolding drama. My steady gaze remained locked onto Austin's visibly shaken face. Each second that passed felt like an eternity, allowing the gravity of the moment to sink deeply into everyone's consciousness. I could see Megan's confusion turning into realization, her face reflecting a mix of shock, sadness, and embarrassment. The children stood quietly, sensing the emotional turmoil yet unable to grasp its significance fully. Austin tried regaining his composure, straightening himself and clearing his throat nervously. "Mom," he began again, this time attempting a confident tone. "I wasn't expecting you here. I thought—" "You thought what, Austin?" I interrupted calmly, my voice projecting a clarity and strength that echoed throughout the spacious lobby. "You thought I wouldn't survive? That leaving me alone in an ICU bed was justified because your vacation mattered more?" He shifted uncomfortably, clearly rattled by my directness. Megan placed a gentle hand on his arm, whispering softly, but Austin brushed her aside, stepping closer to me with forced composure. "This isn't the place for this conversation, Mom," he said sharply, his eyes darting nervously around the room. I shook my head slowly, refusing to be dismissed so easily. "You lost the privilege of choosing the place when you walked away from my hospital room without a second glance. You chose to abandon me publicly. Now, you face the consequences publicly." Austin's jaw tightened, anger and embarrassment clashing in his eyes. "Do you realize how humiliating this is for my family?" he hissed quietly, leaning in closer. "Couldn't this wait until we returned home?" His words ignited a deeper fury within me, fueling my response. "Humiliation? Do you know what humiliation truly is, Austin?" My voice rose, capturing everyone's undivided attention. "Humiliation is waking up after fighting for your life to discover your only child left you behind, caring more about a vacation than his mother's survival." A collective gasp rippled through the observers, further shattering Austin's facade. Megan's eyes welled with tears, her expression clearly devastated by the revelation. "Is this true, Austin?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Austin turned abruptly toward her, desperation clouding his features. "It wasn't like that, Megan. I thought she was stable. The doctors never said I was stable enough to abandon," I interrupted sharply. "You made that choice yourself, Austin. Own it." He faced me again, anger now blazing openly in his eyes. "What do you want from me? An apology? Fine, I'm sorry." "Sorry for what, exactly?" I pressed, maintaining my composure. "Are you sorry you left me or sorry you got caught?" Austin's silence spoke louder than words. Around us, whispers spread quickly, the weight of judgment pressing down heavily on him. Megan shook her head slowly, realization transforming into disappointment and anger. "I trusted you," she murmured, tears escaping down her cheeks. Watching the fallout of his choices unfold visibly rattled Austin, yet he stubbornly refused to fully concede, attempting a deflection. "Look, I made a mistake," he muttered. "But this, making a spectacle, is unnecessary." "No, Austin," I corrected firmly. "This is exactly what's necessary. You abandoned your mother, and you abandoned the values you were raised with. Accountability matters." I pulled out the document Michael had provided me, holding it firmly in my hand. "This," I announced, raising it slightly for emphasis, "is a reminder of those values you've so conveniently forgotten." Austin eyed the paper warily. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Your inheritance depends on your character and your choices. I once believed you embodied integrity, loyalty, and family. Clearly, I was wrong." His eyes widened, shock and anger intertwining as he processed the implications. "You're using money to punish me?" he asked incredulously. "No," I responded calmly, unwavering. "I'm reminding you actions have consequences. Your inheritance was never about money. It was about legacy, respect, and responsibility. If you can't uphold these values, then you don't deserve to benefit from my life's work." Austin stood silent, visibly shaken, the reality of his choices finally sinking in. Megan gently took the children's hands, quietly moving away, distancing herself from Austin's turmoil. He watched them leave, his expression shattering under the realization of everything he was losing. Turning back to me, Austin's shoulders slumped, the fight visibly draining from him. "Mom," he finally said, his voice quieter and filled with genuine regret. "I messed up." "Yes, you did," I acknowledged, softening my tone slightly. "Now you need to decide who you want to be." The lobby, once tense with confrontation, now hummed with a quiet respect for the strength and dignity displayed. People discreetly returned to their activities, offering us the privacy this critical moment demanded. Austin looked at me, genuinely vulnerable for the first time since childhood, uncertainty and regret visible in every line of his face. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said quietly, sincerity finally breaking through. "I thought I was protecting myself, shielding my family from pain." "Pain is inevitable, Austin," I replied gently but firmly. "It's how you face it that defines your character." He nodded slowly, absorbing the profound lesson in silence. Megan, sensing a shift, returned to his side, her gaze questioning yet supportive. The children, sensing reconciliation, moved closer, seeking reassurance in their parents' presence. Standing amidst the emotional wreckage of betrayal, confrontation, and reconciliation, I felt a profound sense of closure. I had faced the deepest betrayal of my life head-on, unmasking truth and demanding accountability. This confrontation marked not only Austin's chance for redemption, but my own healing and reclamation of dignity. As the tense atmosphere gradually dissipated, replaced by tentative hope, I knew I'd taken a critical step forward, not just for myself, but for the future of our family. The next morning arrived with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. Sunlight spilled through the tall hotel windows, bathing the room in a warm, golden hue. The air was still, almost reverent, as if even nature recognized the gravity of what had transpired the day before. I sat quietly in my room, a cup of tea cradled in my hands. The confrontation with Austin had drained me emotionally, but it had also carved open a space I hadn't realized I needed, a space for healing. I hadn't come to Switzerland for revenge. I had come for truth, for acknowledgement, and for closure. And in some strange, painful way, I had received all three. A soft knock at the door stirred me from my thoughts. I set down the cup and walked slowly to answer. When I opened the door, I wasn't surprised to find Megan standing there, her face still marked with the residual tension of yesterday's storm. "Can I come in?" she asked. I nodded, stepping aside. Megan entered cautiously, clasping her hands nervously. She looked at me, eyes earnest. "I had no idea," she began, her voice quiet but unwavering. "I thought you had approved the trip. Austin said you were fine, stable, that there was nothing more he could do." I sighed, gesturing for her to sit. "I don't blame you, Megan. I know how persuasive he can be, and I know how easy it is to believe someone you love when they're telling you what you want to hear." She sat across from me, leaning forward. But it was wrong, all of it. And I didn't realize how far things had drifted between you two. I saw glimpses, sure. The way he avoided your calls, the way he changed the subject whenever your name came up. But I never imagined. "You never imagined he'd leave me," I finished for her, and she nodded solemnly. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. If I had known, if I had even suspected." "You have a kind heart, Megan," I said gently, And your children are lucky to have you. But now you have a choice too, just like Austin. Megan sat in silence, absorbing my words. There was no need to explain further. She understood. Sometimes the strength to face the truth comes not from dramatic gestures, but from quiet reckonings. Later that day, Austin requested to speak to me privately. I agreed, this time choosing a quiet bench outside the hotel, overlooking the lake. He arrived slowly, unsure, his steps less confident than I'd ever seen. There was a humility in his walk that hadn't existed before. "I don't know where to begin," he admitted, sitting beside me. What I did, it wasn't just a mistake. It was cruel. I've spent all night thinking about it, and the truth is I was afraid. "Afraid of what?" I asked, keeping my voice soft. "Afraid of losing you," he said. "Afraid of facing the reality of you being sick, of having to deal with that pain. I thought if I left, if I distracted myself, it would hurt less." I turned to face him fully. "And did it hurt less?" He looked away, ashamed. "Number it hurt more. Especially when I saw you standing in that lobby yesterday. I saw everything I'd thrown away, everything I took for granted. I didn't think you'd make it out of the hospital, and I couldn't even face that possibility. So I ran." "Austin," I said, my voice firm, "being a parent, being a child, being family, it isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be real. We're supposed to face the hard things together." He nodded slowly. "I want to do better. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I'll earn it, if you'll let me." I studied his face, so familiar yet so changed. There was a vulnerability in his expression that felt genuine, a recognition of his failings that he hadn't been capable of showing before. And in that vulnerability, I saw the boy I'd raised, the one who still existed beneath the surface. "Redemption is a path," I said quietly, "not a single act. If you're willing to walk it, I'll meet you there." Austin exhaled, a soft, shaky breath of relief. "Thank you, Mom." That evening, the family sat down together for dinner, a simple meal shared without pretense. There was laughter from the children, soft conversation between Megan and me, and a quiet effort from Austin to reconnect. The rift wasn't healed overnight, but the stitches had begun. As we finished the meal, Max climbed into my lap, wrapping his small arms around my neck. "I missed you, Grandma," he whispered. "I missed you too," I said, holding him tightly. And in that moment, the pain began to ebb, not erased, but softened by love, by presence, by the power of choosing to mend what was broken. This was the climax, not of confrontation, but of reconciliation. Not a dramatic ending, but a new beginning. One forged through truth, pain, and the courage to grow beyond it. Switzerland had changed me, not just because of what happened there, but because of who I had to become while I was there. When I boarded the plane home, I wasn't the same woman who had left in pain and rage. I was carrying something heavier and more complex, acceptance. Not of what Austin had done, but of the fact that I couldn't rewrite the past. I could only decide what came next. Ella sat beside me on the flight, her small head resting against my arm as she fell asleep. Her fingers, curled gently around mine, reminded me of Austin as a child. It felt poetic, holding the hand of the future while reflecting on the broken pieces of the past. As the plane cut through clouds, I stared out at the horizon, letting the quiet buzz of the cabin fill the silence that words couldn't. Coming home was surreal. The same walls, the same photos, but everything had changed. The scent of fresh lilies in the entryway struck me first. Flowers from neighbors who had heard I'd recovered. My hospital bed, once the center of my world, had been removed. The windows were open now and sunlight filtered in freely, as if the house itself had been holding its breath and could finally exhale. Michael was waiting for me. As always, he came bearing too many groceries and just enough sarcasm to keep me grounded. "Look at you," he said as he unpacked a bag of lemons. "Back from the Alps and ready to rebuild Rome?" I smiled. "Something like that." We sat at the kitchen table, the late afternoon casting long shadows across the floor. He watched me for a moment before speaking again. You did what most wouldn't. You didn't just confront him. You made him see you. That takes guts. I didn't do it for him, I said, stirring my tea. I did it for me. That evening, the house was still, but inside me, a storm had settled into a calm ocean. I hadn't forgiven Austin, not fully, but I had found space for him to try. He visited the next day. No grand gestures, no flowers, just him. A man unsure of how to fix what he'd broken, but willing to show up anyway. He helped me with small tasks, replaced a light bulb, cleaned out the gutters, stayed for dinner. He spoke carefully, choosing words with intention. Sometimes he didn't speak at all, and strangely, those were the moments that brought us closest, the shared silences where neither of us tried to pretend. Megan called more often now. We had long talks about motherhood, about how love evolves and sometimes fails us when we need it most. She admitted she'd struggled to stand up to Austin, but promised that was changing. I believed her. Weeks later, I returned to the will. It was still there in my drawer, the ink faded slightly on the page, where I had written Austin's inheritance conditions. I could have erased them, but instead I took out a pen and wrote something new beneath them. Redemption is earned, not owed. Family is not a right, but a responsibility. Then I added one more line. Love is never the absence of hurt, but the presence of healing. The next day, Austin arrived with something in his hands, a photo album. He'd printed the pictures from their trip to Switzerland, the ones I wasn't supposed to be in. I want you to have these, he said, his voice low. They're missing someone, and I need you to know that every smile in here feels a little hollow because of it. I took the album from him gently. I flipped through the pages. The lake, the children playing, Megan laughing in a sun hat, and then a shot of Austin looking out across the mountains, pensive, alone. This one, I said, pointing. This is the moment you realized I wasn't going to disappear quietly, isn't it? He looked down. It was. That was the moment I realized I'd never understood how strong you are. That night I sat by my window as twilight deepened, watching the lights turn on in neighboring houses. I thought about survival, not just of the body, but of the spirit. I had come through illness, abandonment, and betrayal, and I hadn't just endured. I had risen. The pain had carved something fierce and beautiful into me, and while my heart still bore the bruises, it also beat with something I thought I'd lost: peace. I didn't survive just to be remembered. I survived so I could live again, on my own terms, with my voice intact, and with the quiet, unshakable knowledge that I had never, not even once, needed anyone's permission to matter. The weeks turned to months, and the wounds, though still tender, began to close in ways I hadn't expected. Healing, I discovered, wasn't about returning to what once was. It was about redefining what would now be. Life didn't return to how it had been before the ICU, before Switzerland, before the silence. It couldn't. And in a strange, liberating way, I didn't want it to. The woman I had once been, the one who gave without limits, who sacrificed to the point of erasure, was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, sharper, and far more honest with herself. I no longer waited for love to be proven. I no longer negotiated for space in the hearts of those who should have made room for me willingly. That quiet desperation had dissolved in the crucible of betrayal. One afternoon, I stood barefoot in my backyard garden, watching Ella and Max chase each other through the marigolds and lavender. Their laughter, bright and unburdened, floated through the air. It clung to the warm breeze like birdsong, and it hit me. This was grace. The grace of being here. The grace of still getting to witness beauty, joy, and the future unfolding, even after everything that had gone wrong. Austin was there, too, not hovering, not apologizing again and again, just there, present, helping me build a new trellis, asking about the soil pH and sharing a story about his first failed tomato plant. It was awkward at first, like actors fumbling for dialogue in an unscripted scene. But over time, we learned a new rhythm, one not built on obligation, but on presence. He didn't ask for forgiveness anymore. He asked how I was doing. He listened. There were moments of silence between us, long, weighted pauses where the past hovered just beyond the reach of our words. And then sometimes he would speak. "I still think about that day in the ICU," he told me once, sitting beside me on the porch. "How you must have felt waking up alone." I looked at him for a long moment. "I wasn't just alone, Austin. I was erased." He swallowed hard. "I can never undo that." "No," I said, "but you can keep showing up. And you are. That's something." Some days I'd return to my journal, the one that had waited patiently through my illness and grief. My hands, a little stiffer now, remembered the movement, and so I wrote. I wrote about the hospital, about the smell of antiseptic and the quiet hum of machines that had kept me alive. I wrote about betrayal, the kind that comes not like a sword, but like a silence, a choice not to stay. But I also wrote about Switzerland, about stepping off the plane with trembling legs and a fire in my chest, about standing in that hotel lobby with my heart pounding and my voice steady, about claiming my place in a narrative someone else had tried to write without me. And I wrote about Max handing me a flower and saying, "Grandma, this one's for being the strongest." That sentence lived in me now, a quiet anthem I could hum in my darkest hours. Michael, ever the anchor, continued to drop by with frozen meals and unsolicited advice. "You know what your real power is, Ikosus?" he asked one day, squinting at me over his glasses. "You didn't just come back from all this. You changed the room you walked back into." He was right. I had. I started volunteering again, quietly, without fanfare. I taught a parenting class at the local community center for young single mothers. I didn't tell them everything, but I didn't need to. They saw it in the way I carried myself, in the firmness of my voice, in the calm with which I reassured them that surviving wasn't shameful, it was heroic. Sometimes I wrote letters I never mailed, to the woman I used to be, to my late husband, even to Claire, the nurse who had held my hand during those first terrifying hours alone. I wrote to say thank you, to say I remember, to say I forgive you, even when that forgiveness still had rough edges. Eventually, I forgave myself too. Not for loving too deeply, but for believing that my love had to be earned through suffering. One quiet evening, Austin asked to read my journal. I hesitated. Then I handed it to him without speaking. Hours passed. The fire crackled beside us. He read every word, his expression shifting between pain, regret, and something that looked like understanding. When he finished, he didn't say a word. He simply reached over and held my hand. And I let him. We were different now. Not healed, not perfect, but real. And maybe that was the most honest thing a relationship could be. Later that night, I watched Austin tuck Ella into bed. He smoothed her blanket and whispered something that made her giggle. As he kissed her forehead, I felt something inside me finally settle. Maybe this was what healing looked like, not fireworks or tearful reconciliations, but quiet dinners, thoughtful silences, a willingness to keep showing up. Because sometimes, the bravest thing a heart can do isn't to break or rebuild, it's to remember, and to keep loving anyway. It's strange how life offers us the most unexpected mirrors. Mine was a sterile hospital room, a plane ticket to Switzerland, and a moment in a hotel lobby where time stood still. I thought survival would be enough, that waking up, breathing, moving forward would satisfy some primal part of me desperate for justice or peace. But the truth is, survival was just the beginning. This story was never just about betrayal. It was about reclaiming a voice. It was about a woman, a mother, refusing to vanish into the margins of her own life. It was about the quiet war women wage every day between giving and being taken for granted. And it was about what happens when that war ends in a fire, and from the ashes, something new begins. I didn't confront Austin to humiliate him. I didn't rewrite my will to punish him. I did it because silence had cost me too much, because forgiveness without accountability is permission. Because sometimes love means looking someone in the eyes and saying, "You don't get to do this to me." There are still days when I remember the loneliness of that hospital bed, days when I feel the sting of being left. But those memories no longer define me. They inform me. They've given me sharper edges and softer boundaries. I know who I am now, and I don't have to prove it to anyone. Austin is still learning. We all are. But there's a humility in him now that wasn't there before, a willingness to ask questions instead of assuming he knows best, to listen without needing to fix, to apologize without making it about him. That's the man I'm willing to keep letting in. And Megan, steady, gentle Megan, has become more than a daughter-in-law. She's a quiet ally. She calls often. She drops off fresh herbs from her garden and asks for advice she doesn't always need. She reminds me that healing doesn't just happen between the people who hurt each other, but in the relationships that surround them, witnessing and holding space. Max and Ella still run through my garden. They ask the same questions Austin once asked me at their age, but now I answer differently. I don't just tell them how to be strong. I show them what strength looks like when it's quiet, when it's standing alone in a room full of silence, refusing to disappear. So if you're listening to this, if you've ever felt forgotten, dismissed, or underestimated, know this: your worth does not shrink because someone else failed to see it. You do not become invisible because someone closed their eyes. I am Olivia Bennett. I was left behind, but I did not stay there. I flew across an ocean, stood in front of the people who abandoned me, and I told the truth out loud. And that truth, spoken without apology, saved my life. Not just the one I nearly lost in the ICU, but the one I nearly forgot I deserved. This is not just a story of survival. It's a declaration. I am still here, and I'm not going anywhere.